Out of Order Gun Rights Podcast, Episode 75.
Welcome to the Out of Order Podcast, your window into the firearms community, exploring those shaping the future of our rights and protecting our lifestyle, laws, legal cases, activism, and self-defense in a candid and honest podcast for our brothers and sisters in arms. Here's your host, James Kalita.
Thanks for tuning in to episode 75 of the Out of Order Gun Rights Podcast. Today's sponsor is sellmorefirearms.com. Sellmorefirearms.com, where you can get a free 10-step guide to using Facebook and social media to increase sales at your FFL, your gun store. So head over to sellmorefirearms.com, enter your email address, and we'll get you that free guide. If you know someone that may not be listening to this podcast yet that has a gun store, let them know about sellmorefirearms.com. It's a free guide, and it is full of tips they can use to leverage social media, even though it has that anti-gun slant to it. And speaking of anti-gun social media, I want to invite you guys to go over to outoforderjameskalita.com and enter your email address and subscribe for updates. The social media platforms are inherently anti-gun and are just doubling down on their efforts to stop pro-gun people from getting the message out there. So the day is soon coming where we won't even be able to post about guns on Facebook. So before then, make sure you head over to outoforderjameskalita.com, enter your email address, and we'll get you guys the regular updates there on podcast and 2A News. Today's guest is David Hady. David is an author, an attorney, Second Amendment advocate, and now, here's David.
David Hady, welcome to the show.
Hey, happy to be here.
Oh, great. So, if you recently published a book about mass killings, would you tell us a little about that?
Yes, it's Mass Killings. Now I forget the subtitle. Let's see. Myth, Reality, and Solutions. And it's been released by Amazon. So I figure mass killings occur from time to time. Obviously, they are a big issue, and people want to know, what can we do about it? What is the cause? What can we do about it? I start in by discussing the fact that they're not uniquely American. I mean, the largest mass killing in the world was actually in China using bombs. Over 100 dead. The largest mass shooting came in Norway. In fact, if you look at the rates, we have a rate below 3 or 4 European countries. It's not something unique to America or unique to firearms ownership. And from there I go on to, are the rates increasing? And the answer there really is it all depends on how much you want to play with the numbers. Probably not. But depending upon how you define mass shooting and what period of time you're looking at, because it's a rare occurrence. With rare occurrences, it can matter whether you compare now to the year 2000 or the year 2005. And then I go into what motivates the mass shooter. What's going on in his mind? Why would a guy be willing to murder perfect strangers and then usually to get killed or kill himself? And the answer is that apart from the psychotic ones who are just plain delusional, they're almost all extreme cases of narcissistic personality disorder, which is, and bear in mind, we're talking about extreme cases, where the person will do almost anything to get his name recognized, to become an instant celebrity. Even if it's an evil celebrity, it's better than not being one. As one of them put it, screw fame, I'll settle for infamy. That sums up their attitude. And the problem is that they've established, unconsciously, I hope, a symbiotic relationship with the mass media. The mass media gives them what they want, which is instant notoriety and being on, every cable news channel for the next week or two. In return, the mass media gets what it wants for its business model, which is people glued to the screen watching day after day, also watching, of course, the advertising, which establishes the mass media's business model. So then I go into what can we do about it, and the first thing is a proposal for media self-restraint, not leave the incident uncovered. Just after the first, say, 48 hours, stop using the guy's name. Stop putting his photograph on every cover. In the year of the Columbine killings, the Columbine killers had their images on 2 covers of Time magazine. Other people who got their images on the cover included the president, the first lady, Bill Gates, Jesus Christ. They only got 1 cover.
Right, and the killers got 2. And I remember reading at some point in your book that you said that part of the reason people think it's a uniquely American thing is because it's covered much more when these things happen in the United States as opposed to other countries. Do you have any insight as to why that is?
Well, we just naturally tend to focus on what's nearest to us. I think Toronto is having, one of the Canadian cities, is having a heck of a mass violence problem. You'd never read about it in the United States, even though it's right across the border. I mean, if something happens in the U.S., we cover it heavily. How many people know, as I said earlier, the biggest mass slaying in the world came in China? Nobody knows that.
No.
There was, this is going back some years, there was a mass killing in Cologne, Germany, using a homemade flamethrower and a spear. Nobody knows about that.
No. So you mentioned that there are some very psychotic mass killers out there, but in the book you mentioned that that's really the rarity, that the majority are the extreme.
I don't know I would call it rare, but it's substantially the minority. A few of them are just plain nuts, like the Aurora, Colorado shooter who thought he was a villain in a Batman movie. But most of the others are, narcissistic. They know exactly what they are doing, and they have a plan. They plan for months or even years as to how they're going to get their picture out there. The Columbine killers debated between themselves which major director would make the movie about their lives. Now, they had to settle for Michael Moore, and he didn't put in much about their lives anyway, so I guess they got frustrated. But
in the afterlife, yeah. So you talked about Columbine being a watershed event and how the 24-hour news cycle sort of, that it sort of coincided with the beginning of the 24-hour news cycle. Do you think we would have as many as we did if it wasn't for constant coverage? And like you said, the way the media portrays, keeps focusing on the killers and not the victims and not the.
Yeah, I think if you cut that down, you would probably massively reduce the number of these shootings and killings, because that's what they're after. Take away their motive. Why commit the crime? Why rob a bank if they didn't have any money? I mean, these are people who are plotting to get their name and face out there, and if after the first 48 hours it went to, we're reporting on an incident, but nobody has a name. They're the Columbine killers. That's all you need to know.
Right.
And they don't have a face. We're not putting the faces anywhere after 48 hours. I think you'd see a substantial reduction. As I say, if you take away the motive, who would commit the crime?
Right. But did we have these types of events? I mean, I remember reading at some point that, 19th century, there was a mass killing done with a hatchet. And do you think we would still have these events if it wasn't, without that motive? Is that the sole motive, I guess I'm asking?
There will be some, but I think massively fewer.
Oh.
I mean, yeah, we had mass killings in the 19th century. The largest school killing to date was 1927, I think, in Bath, Michigan, using a bomb, killed 44.
Wow.
But, you didn't see a whole lot of people blowing up schools thereafter because you didn't get much publicity.
So one of the things you mentioned too in the book was mental health reform. Would you like to talk a little about that?
Well, I suggest that first of all we ought to devote a lot more resources to it. Right now, especially in rural counties, it's almost impossible to get a person committed. You wind up with things like basically you decide that you prove in court that someone is actually mentally ill and they're a danger to self or others, and then you find there's no place to commit them because there's no hospital within 100 miles that has an open bed for a psychiatric patient. And there was one case of that type, I forget which Virginia it was. They found that the guy was dangerous, but they couldn't find a bed within 100 miles. So they legally had to let him go. Well, he went home, stabbed his father, and killed himself. I mean, they knew he was dangerous. They couldn't find any way to deal with it. The other thing is some states have the requirement that you prove not just that the person is a danger to self or others, but that you also prove that he is an imminent danger. And for example, the Aurora, Colorado mass killer, the theater killer, who thought he was the bad guy in the Batman film, the psychiatrist found that he was a danger to self or others. He was telling her that he thinks about killing other people several times a day, but her judgment was he wasn't an imminent threat, and she's probably right. He wasn't an imminent threat until he actually named a target. And so he wasn't committed. And he had a target, he just hadn't named it. So it's just taking away the imminent requirement. I mean, if a person can be proven a danger to self or others, they really ought to be getting treatment. And some of the new treatments are pretty impressive. In the old days, of course, it was basically lock them up in a loony bin and throw away the key. Today, I'm told they have an antipsychotic medication that is administered by injection and is good for 6 months. So, okay, why not give the guy the injection?
Sure.
So that's the psychiatric end.
I guess when I was reading that, I was a little scared because on the surface it sounds like an excellent idea, but then, I grew up in New Jersey and we just passed what they called a eminent restraining order, where if someone just suggests that you might be dangerous, they take your guns away. Or, we had a professor at Duke say that if you like guns, you're mentally ill. And I've read the DSM-4, never read the 5, but I read the DSM-4, and that book was 500 pages long, and there's not a single definition of sane in there. So, can we trust the government to?
Well, the question is danger to self or others. Not so much the DSM as whether the person actually is dangerous. And I think it's gotten tight enough to where, although I don't trust judges on hardly anything, I think we can trust them to actually be careful about that. The question is the person dangerous or not? Not do they have, I'm told the DSM-5 is something about caffeine dependency. Well, I put down 4 cups of espresso this morning just to wake up. But nobody could say I'm in danger to self or others. I mean, unless they merited it.
Well, right. Or they were willing to be dishonest. Yeah. And all right. So now I was reading this morning on your website. Is this your 5th book that you've written and 13 journal articles?
5 books. I haven't updated the webpage in a long time. Now I'm up to 26 law review articles.
Oh, wow. Okay.
2 of them cited by the United States Supreme Court. which any law professor would kill for that distinction.
Yeah.
Of course, no law school will hire me because one, I'm conservative, and two, I'm experienced. They don't hire experienced people. They really don't.
All right. I thought you were going to say because you were conservative and pro-gun, but conservative and experienced. Wow. So, I mean, I saw you've done a lot of pro-2A work. Any of the other ones you think my readers would be interested in? Listeners would be interested in?
I've got the book before mass killings. It's also on Amazon. It's I'm from the government and I'm here to kill you. The human cost of official negligence, where I talk about how basically the way the legal system is set up, the government, the federal government, is virtually free to kill people by negligence. And what happens when you have a legal regime like that? Well, they get negligent. There's no downside to it. It starts off with the Texas City explosion of 1947, I think it was, where the federal government, by negligence, managed to blow a town flat and kill 600 people. And this went up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said they could not sue the federal government, even though it was basically making bomb-grade ammonium nitrate, specifically treated under a patent for bomb explosive, and shipping it in paper sacks labeled fertilizer. It's people manufacturing in ammunition plants had warned, we're making this stuff too fast. It's coming out at too high a temperature. This is dangerous. And their superiors said, do nothing. The Supreme Court said they can't be sued. So I go through that and a whole bunch of other cases up to the ATF case, Fast and Furious, recently. Along the way, I deal with Waco, where I had a role in investigating that and perhaps a role in there being further investigation. I have a few little astonishing things in that, like the one thing that almost all the media has ignored is that the ATF had undercover agents in a house across from the Davidians building, the Davidians being the people they were investigating. Mm-hmm. And supposedly they could not arrest David Koresh peacefully because he never left the building. Well, I got their official report of the agents in that undercover house as to what they did 9 days before the initial raid and shootout. They went shooting with David Koresh. No kidding.
Wow.
So they couldn't arrest him peacefully? I don't think so.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, they actually went out and knocked on the door and asked, can we go shooting in the empty land behind your building? And David Koresh came down and said, yeah, sure. They had AR-15s. He said, I got a bunch of ammunition for those. Let me come with you. According to their report, they went out in the field and went shooting. And at the outset, Koresh was unarmed. They had all the guns. They could have easily made it a peaceful arrest. But the point was that would not have generated publicity, and the agency wanted publicity. Wow. So that's all in, I'm from the government, and I'm here to kill you.
Yeah, I'm excited to read that one. Someone, one of my guests a few weeks ago mentioned that, and I was, and at first I didn't realize it was until you sent me that email, I didn't realize it was the same author. So, but that's, really excited to read that one. And you did a lot of work on Waco, right? Aside from this book?
3 years of Freedom of Information Act suits, yes. I at the end, after Janet Reno appointed an independent counsel, all of a sudden they gave in, and I started receiving boxes of videotapes and audio tapes. I mean, like boxes 3 foot square. And I'm all stocked up, pages of material, photographs, just tons of stuff, and a whole bunch of eye openers in there.
Well, I will link to all of those books on the show notes page. And what's the best website for people to find you at?
I've got several, but they're sort of split up. My personal website is hardylaw.net. I'm from the government, and I'm here to kill you. If you want to see the evidence for it, I think it's from thegovernment.com.
Oh, that's a great URL.
Yeah. And if you want to see the books, Amazon's the simplest place to go.
Okay, great. All right, well, Mr. Hardy, I thank you so much for being on the show. Any parting words for our listeners?
I can't think of anything really.
Oh, all right. Well, I thank you very much for being on, and after I read that next book, I'll reach out to you, and maybe we can talk again.
Sounds good. Sure.
All right.
More than willing.
Thanks for tuning in to episode 75 of the Out of Order Gun Rights podcast. Please head over to the show notes page, outoforderjameskalita.com/75. You'll find links to the books and websites David and I talked about, and you'll also find links to our sponsors. You can help out the show by using the Amazon affiliate links on that page. Just use the search bar that's there. Anything you purchase that day helps out the show at no additional cost to you. You can also find a link there to Liberty Classroom, where you get the history and economics lessons they didn't teach you in high school, and to Liberty Maniacs, where you get the cool 2A pro-gun, pro-liberty shirts, mugs, bags, things like that. So head over to outoforderjameskalita.com/75. And please remember, however you're listening to this, whether you're using iTunes on your iPhone or your computer, or you're using Podcatcher, Google Podcasts, Stitcher on your Android phone, please remember to subscribe and leave a review. So subscribe, review, and share, if you would. Subscribe to the show, write a review to help us reach more people, and share with your gun-owning friends. If you're part of a Facebook group, if you can share an episode there, or with your Facebook friends, or send out a tweet, let people know the show is out there. This is Out of Order, James Kalita. We'll see you next time.